Steve Harvey had presided over Family Feud for more than 2 decades, navigating thousands of family dynamics and witnessing virtually every conceivable variation of human behavior under the pressure of game show competition. However, nothing in his extensive experience could have prepared him for what would unfold on a crisp April afternoon in 2024. The studio audience settled into their seats with anticipation. The familiar upbeat music filled the air, creating an atmosphere of excitement and possibility. And 2 families stood ready to compete in what everyone assumed would be another entertaining episode featuring the customary mix of laughter and competitive spirit, and perhaps a few memorable incorrect answers that would showcase Steve's legendary comedic reactions. The Morrison family from Michigan faced off against the Taylor family from Tennessee, both teams projecting enthusiasm and family solidarity as they took their positions on the brightly lit stage. What began as a seemingly typical family game show would transform into one of the most revealing moments in television history, as a husband's casual lie about the state of his marriage would be exposed by his wife's unexpected correction, forcing Steve Harvey to navigate a situation that would demonstrate how dishonesty about fundamental aspects of relationships can mask deeper problems that require immediate attention and intervention. The Morrison family consisted of 5 members who presented themselves as a stable, middle-class unit when they first appeared on the Family Feud stage. Leading the team was 42-year-old Kevin Morrison, a sales manager from Detroit who carried himself with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to crafting narratives and managing impressions to achieve desired outcomes. His polished appearance and practiced charm communicated someone invested in presenting a successful image to the world. Standing beside him was his wife of 17 years, Lauren Morrison, a 40-year-old woman whose quiet observation and careful attention to details immediately distinguished her from typical game show contestants. Lauren worked as a middle school science teacher, a profession requiring both patience and the ability to recognize when students were attempting to mislead or misdirect, rather than providing honest responses. Their 2 children completed the primary family unit. 14-year-old Emma stood on the stage with the observant wariness of a teenager who had learned to navigate parental tensions and inconsistencies, while 11-year-old Jacob displayed enthusiasm about the game show experience that suggested he remained somewhat protected from the full extent of his parents' marital difficulties. Completing the team was Kevin's college friend, 39-year-old Trevor Walsh, who worked in information technology and had maintained contact with Kevin throughout the years despite living in different cities. Lauren Morrison had been surprised when Kevin insisted they apply to appear on Family Feud. Their marriage had been strained for the past 18 months, with Kevin working increasingly long hours and showing diminishing interest in family activities or emotional connection with Lauren and their children. Lauren had suggested marriage counseling multiple times, but Kevin had dismissed her concerns, insisting that everything was fine and that she was overreacting to normal career pressures and life stresses. Lauren had reluctantly agreed to the Family Feud application, hoping that perhaps the experience would create positive memories and remind them of happier times in their relationship. What Lauren could not have anticipated was that this day would expose the fundamental dishonesty that had been undermining their marriage, revealing that Kevin's dismissal of her concerns was itself part of a pattern of deception about the true state of their relationship and his actual feelings about their future together. If you have ever wondered how small lies about relationship status can reveal larger patterns of deception and emotional abandonment, and how one person's insistence on truth can force acknowledgement of problems that have been minimized or denied, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that remind us of the importance of honesty in relationships and the courage required to confront uncomfortable truths, even when doing so disrupts comfortable fictions that have been maintained to avoid difficult conversations and necessary changes. The game began with typical enthusiasm and energy that characterized Family Feud episodes. The Taylor family played with genuine warmth and mutual encouragement, celebrating correct answers and supporting one another through inevitable mistakes with grace and good humor. The Morrison family participated competently, with Kevin taking a leadership role in team discussions and Lauren providing steady support to their children while maintaining careful attention to the game dynamics and to her husband's behavior and comments throughout the taping. The first indication that problems were developing emerged during Steve Harvey's customary pregame banter with the families. Steve asked each team to share something about themselves, and when he reached Kevin Morrison, Kevin provided what appeared to be a standard introduction designed to present his family in the best possible light. Kevin stated that he and Lauren had been happily married for 17 years, that they had 2 wonderful children, and that appearing on Family Feud together represented the kind of quality family time that had always been a priority in their relationship. The words seemed innocuous and appropriate for the context, the kind of cheerful summary that contestants typically provided when introducing themselves on game shows. However, Lauren Morrison's reaction to Kevin's characterization of their marriage was immediate and visible to anyone paying close attention. Her expression shifted from neutral observation to something that resembled surprise mixed with pain, and her body language communicated tension and disagreement with what Kevin had just stated about the nature and quality of their relationship. Steve Harvey, with his finely tuned ability to read interpersonal dynamics developed through years of working with families in high-pressure situations, immediately noticed Lauren's reaction to Kevin's description of their marriage. However, the game format required proceeding with the introduction process, and Steve moved on to other family members while making a mental note of the tension he had observed between Kevin and Lauren. The game progressed through several rounds, with both families demonstrating solid knowledge of survey responses and accumulating points through correct answers and strategic gameplay. However, the earlier tension between Kevin and Lauren became increasingly apparent as the episode continued. During the third round, when Steve asked a question about things couples argue about, Kevin buzzed in and answered with notable dismissiveness that couples argue about nothing important, just small irritations that get blown out of proportion. Lauren's expression during this response communicated clear disagreement and frustration with Kevin's characterization of marital conflict as trivial rather than meaningful. The situation reached a critical point during the fifth round when Steve posed a question asking contestants to name something married people stop doing after several years together. Kevin provided an answer about romantic gestures, delivering his response with a tone that suggested such changes were natural and unimportant aspects of long-term relationships. Lauren's reaction to this answer was visible distress, and she turned away from the podium with tears forming in her eyes that she attempted to hide from the cameras and audience. Steve Harvey recognized that something significant was occurring beyond normal game show dynamics. He made a decision to address what he was observing rather than simply proceeding with the game, as though nothing unusual was happening. Steve approached Lauren directly and asked her in a gentle tone whether she was all right and whether there was something she needed to share about what was being discussed on stage. What happened next would transform the episode from standard game show fare into a powerful moment of truth and intervention. Lauren Morrison made a decision to speak honestly rather than maintaining the fiction that Kevin had established through his introduction and his dismissive comments about marriage throughout the game. She stated clearly and directly that she needed to correct something her husband had said during the introduction, because his characterization of their marriage as happy and prioritizing quality family time was not accurate and represented exactly the kind of dishonesty that had been destroying their relationship for the past 18 months. Lauren explained that Kevin had been emotionally distant and unavailable for more than a year, that he routinely canceled family plans for work obligations, that he dismissed her attempts to discuss their relationship problems as overreaction and unnecessary drama, and that his description of their marriage as happy was a complete fabrication designed to maintain appearances rather than acknowledge the reality that their relationship was in serious crisis and heading toward dissolution unless significant changes occurred. The studio fell into shocked silence as Lauren continued speaking, her voice steady despite the emotional difficulty of exposing private marital problems on national television. She explained that she had repeatedly asked Kevin to attend marriage counseling, to make time for their relationship, and to engage honestly about the problems they were facing. Kevin had consistently refused these requests, insisting that everything was fine and that Lauren's concerns were exaggerated or unfounded. Lauren stated that hearing Kevin describe their marriage as happy on national television had finally made clear to her that he was either genuinely disconnected from reality or deliberately lying about the state of their relationship to avoid accountability for his emotional abandonment of their family. Kevin Morrison's face cycled through expressions of shock, anger, and embarrassment as he processed his wife's public contradiction of his narrative. He attempted to minimize her concerns, stating that Lauren was having a difficult day and was overreacting to normal relationship challenges that all couples faced. He suggested that discussing private matters on television was inappropriate and that they should focus on the game rather than on issues that could be addressed later at home. Steve Harvey's response to this attempted dismissal would demonstrate his commitment to truth and his recognition that some moments transcend entertainment considerations to require genuine intervention and support. Steve stated clearly that he could not simply proceed with the game as though nothing significant had occurred, because what Lauren had revealed suggested serious problems that required immediate attention rather than continued avoidance and denial. Steve explained that Kevin's attempt to characterize Lauren's concerns as overreaction, while simultaneously lying about the nature of their marriage on national television, demonstrated exactly the pattern of dismissiveness and dishonesty that Lauren had described. Steve addressed Kevin directly, explaining that calling your marriage happy when your wife is clearly distressed and has been requesting counseling for 18 months represents either profound disconnection from your partner's reality or deliberate deception designed to avoid addressing problems that threaten the relationship's survival. Steve made clear that neither possibility reflected well on Kevin's commitment to honest partnership or his willingness to engage with the legitimate concerns his wife had been expressing. Steve then turned his attention to Lauren and spoke to her with compassion and validation. He told her that speaking truth in the face of dismissal and denial required courage, and that her willingness to correct Kevin's false characterization of their marriage demonstrated strength and clarity about what she deserved in a relationship. Steve explained that living with someone who denies your reality and dismisses your legitimate concerns represents a form of psychological invalidation that causes profound harm over time, and that demanding acknowledgement and honest engagement with relationship problems was both appropriate and necessary. Steve addressed the Morrison children, explaining that they had witnessed something important about the difference between maintaining comfortable fictions and engaging honestly with relationship challenges. He emphasized that their mother's decision to speak truth rather than support their father's false narrative was an act of courage designed to create the possibility of genuine change, and that they should understand this moment as reflecting their mother's commitment to honesty rather than as criticism of their father that they needed to defend against or choose sides regarding. Steve made a decision about how to proceed with the taping. He announced that the game would pause to allow the Morrison family privacy to process what had occurred, and that if they chose to return and complete the episode, that option would be available. However, Steve made clear that his primary concern was providing the family with access to resources and support rather than completing a television program. Steve personally ensured that Lauren had contact information for marriage counselors, therapists who specialized in helping people navigate relationship crises, and support resources for families dealing with emotional disconnection and potential separation. The production crew provided private space for the Morrison family to discuss what had happened and to make decisions about how they wanted to proceed. After approximately 45 minutes, Kevin and Lauren emerged with their children and informed production staff that they had decided not to complete the game show taping. Lauren explained that the conversation they had initiated needed to continue in a therapeutic setting rather than on a game show stage, and that she appreciated Steve's intervention and support, but felt that returning to the game would send confusing messages to their children about priorities and appropriate responses to relationship crises. When news of what had occurred spread in the weeks following the taping, the response reflected complex perspectives about privacy, public confrontation of relationship problems, and the appropriateness of Steve Harvey's intervention. Some commentators praised Lauren for refusing to support Kevin's false narrative about their marriage and for using the moment to force acknowledgement of problems that Kevin had been denying. These supporters argued that Kevin's willingness to lie about the state of their relationship on national television demonstrated that private conversations had failed to produce honest engagement, and that public contradiction was necessary to prevent continued avoidance. Other commentators expressed concern that exposing marital problems on national television created additional trauma for the Morrison children, and that Lauren's confrontation, however justified by Kevin's dishonesty, should have occurred in private therapeutic settings rather than on a game show stage. These critics acknowledged that Kevin's behavior appeared problematic based on Lauren's description, but questioned whether public exposure served the family's best interests, given the permanent nature of televised confrontation. Lauren Morrison addressed these varying perspectives in a thoughtful statement released several weeks after the incident. She acknowledged that her decision to correct Kevin's false characterization of their marriage had been difficult, and that she understood why some people questioned whether public confrontation was appropriate. However, Lauren explained that Kevin's pattern of dismissing her concerns in private while maintaining false appearances publicly had created a situation where she felt compelled to speak truth in the moment rather than allowing his deception to stand unchallenged once again. Lauren discussed her decision-making process, explaining that hearing Kevin describe their marriage as happy while she stood beside him experiencing ongoing emotional abandonment and dismissal had created a clarity that their relationship could not continue on its current trajectory. She stated that remaining silent would have communicated to her children that supporting lies to maintain appearances was more important than speaking truth, and that she believed modeling honesty, even in difficult circumstances, would benefit her children more than would teaching them to collaborate in maintaining comfortable fictions. Kevin Morrison released a statement several months after the incident, acknowledging that he had not been honest about the state of his marriage, and that his dismissal of Lauren's concerns had been wrong and harmful. However, the statement reflected limited insight into the deeper patterns that had created the crisis, focusing primarily on his failure to communicate effectively rather than addressing the fundamental emotional disconnection and dishonesty that had characterized his approach to the relationship for 18 months. The Morrison family entered intensive marriage counseling following the Family Feud incident, working with a therapist who specialized in helping couples navigate crises involving dishonesty, emotional disconnection, and asymmetric perception of relationship health. The therapeutic process revealed that Kevin had been struggling with depression and work-related stress that he had attempted to manage through emotional withdrawal rather than through honest communication with Lauren about his internal experiences and need for support. The counseling also uncovered that Kevin's dishonesty about the state of their marriage reflected his genuine disconnection from Lauren's emotional reality, combined with his fear that acknowledging problems would require changes he felt unable or unwilling to make. The therapeutic work focused on helping Kevin develop capacity for emotional honesty and engagement, while supporting Lauren in establishing boundaries around what she needed from the relationship to consider remaining in the marriage. 18 months after the Family Feud incident, the Morrison family reported that their marriage had improved significantly through sustained therapeutic work and Kevin's commitment to honest communication and emotional presence. Both Kevin and Lauren acknowledged that the public confrontation, while painful and disruptive, had created the crisis necessary for Kevin to recognize that his pattern of denial and dismissal was destroying their relationship and that genuine change was required rather than continued avoidance. Steve Harvey spoke about the incident in general terms during subsequent interviews, explaining that his decision to pause the game and address what he had witnessed had been driven by his recognition that Lauren's distress and Kevin's dismissiveness suggested serious underlying problems that transcended game show context. Steve emphasized that while he understood concerns about privacy and appropriate boundaries between entertainment and intervention, he believed that witnessing obvious pain and dishonesty, while simply proceeding with trivial competition, would have represented a failure of basic human compassion and responsibility. The lasting significance of Steve Harvey's intervention extended beyond the immediate impact on the Morrison family. The incident became referenced in discussions about the importance of validating partner concerns rather than dismissing them, the harm caused by lying about relationship status to maintain appearances, and the ways that public confrontation of dishonesty can sometimes create opportunities for genuine change that private conversations have failed to produce. As we reflect on this powerful story, it serves as a reminder that small lies about relationship happiness can reflect larger patterns of emotional disconnection and avoidance, that dismissing partner concerns as overreaction represents a form of psychological invalidation that causes profound harm, and that speaking truth about relationship problems requires courage, but can create the crisis necessary for genuine acknowledgement and change. Lauren Morrison's decision to correct her husband's false narrative demonstrated that honesty sometimes requires disrupting comfortable fictions, and Steve Harvey's intervention showed that witnessing distress while prioritizing entertainment over human welfare represents a failure of basic compassion and responsibility. If this story has reminded you of the importance of honesty about relationship status and emotional connection, the harm caused by dismissing legitimate partner concerns as overreaction, or the courage required to speak truth even when doing so disrupts appearances and creates discomfort, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Share this story with someone who might benefit from understanding that maintaining false narratives about relationship happiness serves no one, that validation of partner concerns represents basic respect rather than weakness, and that genuine change often requires crisis that forces acknowledgement of problems that have been minimized or denied for too long.